An associate art director at League of Legends.
We just want to give players like a different way to experience League.
Early in the history of Riot, you had to be a certain level of character. Is that still the same thing?
That I think still lives on to some degree.
4 key things that make Valorant characters successful.
We wanted like a 5-year-old kid to be able to look at the character and say, oh, I know what this guy does.
How much did you cry?
It was less than a year before we shipped where we completely rebooted all of the characters.
You kidding me? Did you redo all the characters?
Basically cut out as many people as possible from the process and just put our heads together.
Hi everyone, my name is Ninel Anderson. I'm CEO of Devoted Studios and I'm your host at Devoted SpeakEasy. Tonight, as always, we have an amazing guest, Minoh Kim. Hi Minoh.
Hello. How's it going, Ninel?
Well, I'm super excited to have a chat. For anyone who doesn't know Minoh, he is currently an associate art director at League of Legends and responsible for maps and modes. Previously to do that, he has been with Riot since 2014, right? Mm-hmm. And the coolest achievement that Minoh is really proud of is shipping Valorant, where he was a 3D character lead. And as we all know, Valorant characters are very, very special. Besides that, Minoh was at Sony Entertainment America, working on NBA franchise at Cryptic, and you've been in industry for, 25 years, right?
Started in 97. So yeah, it's like 25-ish years.
I'm like, what was in 1990? Was it Sony PlayStation?
Yeah, PlayStation 1.
Was PlayStation 1?
Yeah, they were just starting to talk about PlayStation 2 at that time.
Crash Bandicoot, all of the cool games. I have, I get shivers thinking about my player experience, and you were already building games. So
yeah, I felt like I got into the industry late, even in the late 90s.
You kidding me?
Back then, I mean, everything's relative. Back then, there were people that were doing it for like a decade already. And I was like, oh man, I'm just getting in now. I feel like such a noob.
Wow, you are a special kind of noob.
You're an associate art director on maps and modes. Mm-hmm. My previous episode was about Call of Duty. It was also about maps and modes. Completely different style, completely different gameplay. So I feel like environment has been a topic of 2024 for me. So obviously League of Legends is the game that is beloved by millions and millions of players. Can you reveal more about your role? What does the art direction of modes look like? What does that include? How's your team organized?
We have like resources like for each discipline spread across all of gameplay. And so for each of the projects, there are internal folks representing each discipline. So typically we have like 1 or 2 point people. So that would be for example, Arena, it would be, 1 or 2 VFX artists, 1 environment artist, 1 concept artist, that kind of thing. So we're kind of really scrappy. There are small teams, basically attached to each project. And so there's a lot of R&D, a lot of prototyping that gets done internally. We also do this in concert, with, studios like Devoted, working on concept iterations back and forth.
This is not a promotion.
Oh, sorry. Was I supposed to mention that?
No, it's fine. Fine.
But basically it's like that. Well, I could just say vendor, but we work with vendors in that capacity. And so there's a lot of back and forth between internal prototyping, external concept iteration, blockouts, and then 3D production assets. And that's how we essentially build these modes up from the ground up. From inception, it's just like an idea in a designer's head, to shipping content out to players.
And your latest featured mode that was launched was the game arena, right? Mm-hmm. And it was created for 2 versus 2 battles in the compact area. Can you share some, interesting facts or stories about the production of this mode? The
goal basically was to just create a fun, casual mode where it's like, it's a little bit more like akin to Street Fighter. fighting game genres type of stuff. So it's like quick battle mode stuff where it's lower investment, I would say, maybe in time and I don't know if this is the right term, stress levels when you're playing it, than typically playing like a Summoner's Rift game where it's about 45-minute investment. So we wanted kind of a lightweight experience that was really casual, really crazy, over the top fun. So a very arcadey type of experience. As far as that, I do think that we were fairly successful. Obviously, there were things that we learned with the first release of Arena, which was last summer. We released, we took in player feedback, made some adjustments, and we released a small content update to that in December. Did the same kind of thing, took in again additional player feedback, made some adjustments, and then we just put out like a new version. Maybe we could spend more time on developing, additional content for players because, in my opinion, content is king. Players just want to, do cool stuff and play on cool arenas and see cool environments and that kind of stuff. But we have constraints because of, again, the whole resourcing conversations. Where do we allocate, people? We have so many other initiatives and things going on, other projects, and so what can we allocate to these projects? And modes covers at this point, multiple projects. It's not just one thing. So there's just so much going on. In the end, if we had, unlimited amounts of money and funding and stuff, it'd be great to make more cool stuff for players.
I don't think we could create anything cool if we were not constrained, right? I feel like if we were not constrained by anything, we would never ship anything ever. So having budget and time limitation. I was actually having a conversation with someone the other day, and they were like, well, we wish we would have fully updated, documentation on everything, and everything was like button up. And I'm like, it's kind of like this weird thing. I feel like people who have all the documentation up to date don't produce enough.
You're saying don't put out enough content?
I feel like you can be like very bureaucratic and create like tons of documentation, or you can just sit down and do it. And I feel like there's always this ratio of like, what do you want to spend your time? Do you want to spend time producing things, or do you want to spend time writing documentation? This is not an advice to not build documentation. I'm not saying that.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think with everything in life, there's like a balance point, right? So you need a little bit of that in order to unlock the other side of things. You definitely need to have some documentation. On our side, being an art director, there's like, again, the whole resourcing conversations, there's scoping conversations where I have to fill out a bunch of different documents and sheets, like how many people will it take? How many man hours to do this type of work? What must we do? What should we do? And what could we do? Is like that type of stuff. But it's necessary because, leadership has to see that, and they have to say, okay, we'll give you this much budget so you can ship your thing out.
Yeah, budget is a very necessary evil in the production of things. I wonder where did the idea of creating modes even come from? Like, I remember like early days, I was still at wargaming, which was like when dinosaurs were running around the globe, and every Friday me and my team would just like play League, and it was like literally one environment, and I guess it evolved since then significantly. What was the idea behind that? Any other cool developments you guys are having?
Yeah, the whole idea, I think, for modes is just, again, it's the content is king type of thing, and we just want to give players like a different way to experience League. That's not the typical Summoner's Rift, and there's ARAM. And we have TFT, which is like a very alternate type of experience. But within the League ecosystem, we just wanted to give players another way to have fun playing our game.
I think we're still having fun.
You're the person who works on a day-to-day, and our main audience is still not players, is video game developers and artists. Like, what can they learn from your experience building modes and maps?
There are a lot of different disciplines that factor into even like a smaller mode like Arena. We have like UX designers. They have to redesign the UI, basically, the layouts, different information, because it's a different mode. You need different information for players to be communicated so they can understand, what team am I fighting now? I don't know. What is my team's health? If I lose this battle, am I going to be kicked out of the mode? Am I going to die or whatever? So all of these different kind of aspects need to be communicated. That's just in design, and then on top of that, we have like the visual design, and then they come in and they have to skin all that up. And so they draw in all the little boxes, the icons, the framing elements. It is even just that one thing is a ton of work, and so multiple people have to hack away at that for months and months and months. Then there's engineering support for all of that work to be implemented correctly. So again, that's just like one small aspect. There's like icon development. So when a designer wants to create like a new augment or item for the game, it's like, oh, we have to design the icon for it, and then that goes off onto the visual development team or visual design team as well. And it's, again, we have to source resources, who's going to draw them, who's going to concept them. So it's like every single small aspect, it's just so when you play, it's like kind of a seamless experience type of thing. So players don't really notice. It's kind of transparent in a lot of ways. But then on the development side, it's like, oh my gosh, you have to kind of keep your eye on so many different areas. It's like an octopus, right? And you got your hands in all sorts of different things constantly. And, something happens over here, and, maybe just an example off the top of my head, if icons are being developed at a slower velocity than you initially thought they would, then it's like, okay, well, what other resources can we find to finish them off, by the drop dead date or pencils down?
A part of me is like, oh my God, they found a cool way of reuse, a bunch of the existing content, characters, skins, animation, parts of the environment. But like hearing your story, it sounds like, yeah, you can reuse some of it, but a lot of it is pretty much doing it from scratch. Is that my correct understanding? Or is mostly UX that needs to be redone and, your level design fully redone?
That's a good question. The level design, obviously, for Arena is very unique. These are small, very contained battle arenas, because we want that shorter, kind of tighter gameplay experience where you're playing. I think each round maybe lasts about a minute and a half or something like that. So it's a much more condensed, battle, I guess, experience than it would be like on Summoner's Rift, where it's like, oh, you have to lane and then you got to fight here and there. And so we redesigned all these arenas based on the gameplay, on the design of the entire mode. So there's that. That's all brand new. But to your point, we repurpose as much as possible, because this is a variant of the League kind of game experience, right? It's not like a whole brand new game. And so we're borrowing as much as possible. So things like, even within the items, most of the items I would say from maybe like 95% of them are the same from League. And then maybe just a few of them we've added on, or we've adjusted a few of them. So people that are familiar with League, that play League, they can jump in and they have some base level, familiarization and understanding of how League works, and they can acclimate to the new game mode pretty quickly. But then once they play more, it's kind of like the whole it's easy to learn, difficult to master. Then you can discover like the nuances behind it. And I'm going to be honest, I think I was kind of going into this earlier, but I am not very good at the game.
Well, I remember that early in the history of Riot, you had to be a certain level of character. And if you're not a certain level of character, then you can't work at Riot. Is that still the same thing?
I think that there was. I'm going to be honest, even back when I joined in 2014, I don't know if that was a hard cut policy. I think it was kind of generally understood that it would be better for you and a better experience, or you would have a better development experience if you were a gamer and you were very familiar with the products. That I think still lives on to some degree, but it has definitely lessened over the years.
Well, I know that you have like a long history at Riot, obviously from 2014, and prior to working on maps, you were also lead character and worked on the Champions team. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. I worked on the Champions team for I think like a year and a half ish.
Yeah, there are more than 160 champions in the game as
Oh
of
my
now.
gosh, man.
I always find it interesting to find people who are switching from characters to environments, from environments to characters, and I think you've made a leap here. So you were personally involved in creating several characters, right? Can you tell us more about the process? How are your characters designed and developed from concept to the gameplay ready model?
Yeah, I mean, from the art perspective, it's we have a character that is identified as maybe there's a gap, and so we don't have like an ADC. I'm just coming up with a crazy example, but we don't have an ADC that is like a My Little Pony, and so we were like, oh well, we should have a My Little Pony ADC, and so there's a lot of ideation. Yeah, so this is it is kind of like that where it's like, oh, so there's this kind of gap in thematic and then role, and how do we fill that and what can we fill that with? And so initially in ideation, there's a whole bunch of sketches, different ideas, just kind of throwing things at the wall, seeing what sticks. That can go on for a few weeks, maybe even depending on when we actually need to ship the product. That can go on maybe even for months before people figure out, oh, that is exact. That just speaks to me, and then the team aligns behind it. Possibly.
Okay, I'm all ears. I'm listening.
I don't know if that sounded crazy, but yeah, it's sometimes, right? Because with new champions, because there are so many, it's like you want to come up with a really striking idea, and so that idea or that new thematic has to really land with a lot of people on the team, and so occasionally it's like there can be the art magic thing, and it's the first thing that you do is the right one. We'll still go through the process and vet it probably for a little while, but sometimes people come full circle and they spend a few weeks on something, and then the first sketch that you did is like probably the idea that you want to go with.
How do you define what's the right one? Like, do you have like I don't know, like a concilium of people? Do you vote in every little detail in a piece of it? Like, what is right?
Yeah, I think it's not like a breakdown generally, unless it's like a specific craft art review. If it's concept craft art review, then you'll dial in and drill down on specific things. But it's more of high level. It's like the essence of this character, is it speaking to me? And so it's not so much like a robotic, like we're checking all these boxes specifically, but it's more of like the essence of this is like, oh, this is just so cool. Or if it's supposed to be like an awesome, crazy, uber character, god that rains down fire on people, does it feel like amazing and badass, that kind of thing. And so it's like once you hit it, the team kind of aligns behind that. The investors, stakeholders, kind of all the way up the chain, people see it and they're like, oh man, let's go with that. That looks cool.
Wow. Amazing.
I can only imagine how many voices with a poor concept artist who is just like, no, this is my idea. And people like keep voicing it and you're like, just let me do my job. So is that design who because you mentioned like, does it speak the essence of the character? So there's still a design brief.
It is somewhat of an organic process. And so even in like a design brief, we could have a general direction that we want. But then as we're developing it, as we're, doing ideation, if we're just not able to really hit whatever it is, this kind of ambiguous vision that maybe a designer had, then sometimes art can drive it, or, narrative can drive it. Like it can shift. And so the vision holder for like each of these champions can be an artist. It could be a designer. I think in some cases, maybe even a producer,
Everybody knows producers don't work. They just do spreadsheets.
Oh, man. That's harsh.
Get it. I am a producer myself, so I can...
you can say that.
I can make those jokes. Okay, moving on the part of your story that you're very, very proud and excited about is Valorant. Were you on the team from the very beginning? Did you join midway?
I joined in 2016, I believe. So yeah, maybe midway. Maybe like a little bit after midway, the midway point, but yeah, somewhere around there.
a lot of the concepts that you worked on and a lot of the characters that you worked on were in the initial release of the game. Do you have like a special one, like your favorite, the one that you're most proud of?
I'm going to be honest, like, so even though I can do concepts, that wasn't my specific role on Valorant, but I worked with the concept artists in concert. And so when Larry Ray, who is my current manager on League, he was the concept artist on Valorant as well. And so he's designed tons of champions over the years for League of Legends, and so brought him over to Valorant, and he helped design agents for the project as well. So we're working with Larry Ray and Josh Smith on concepts. They would draw stuff out, and for me, because I'm more of a 3D, craft person, I think in terms of how is this going to look in the game. And so I'm like, we're probably going to need stitching here because this is a little bit higher fidelity of a project. We have, you get closer to the characters than you do in League, so you actually see things like this. And so I kind of pushed what I felt like was important for the game. A little bit further than maybe where they were, but we all ended up finding a balance.
It's a collaborative process. How do you guys even make them so different? Like, what is the key to success?
I think
that's deep.
Yeah, it is pretty deep. So if I'm thinking specifically about Valorant, because League, I think, has been around for so long. I think early on in League, and you're a longtime League player, you probably saw this as well. I think early on in League, it was more of what could we do to throw characters in there that were just cool, and they could do cool things, and players that play these characters would feel powerful. Whereas with Valorant, we definitely had all of those different factors in mind. But we also wanted to push the diversity of the cast as well. And we did that right off the bat. And so, obviously, if you see even the entire launch roster of Valorant right off the bat, it's like, oh, well, we have, characters, different backgrounds, different cultures, all sorts of things, different accents, everything. So we really wanted to go in all these different directions right off the bat with the project. That was one of I would say the main pillars of character design for that. And it wasn't just art pushing on this again, it's, as you mentioned, it was it's a collaboration. The entire team was kind of developing towards this goal. So it was, production wanted this, narrative people were writing this into the characters. There was a certain point, it was less than a year before we shipped, where we completely rebooted all of the characters. And that was a pretty crazy point in Valorant's development.
What does rebooting characters even? Did you redo all the characters?
Yeah. So over the course of Valorant's development, they had a lot of different kind of versions of the final agents that were released. We had a cast or a roster of the launch characters that didn't really seem resonant. They were interesting looking, and they looked pretty cool, but we wanted a 5-year-old kid to be able to look at the character and say, oh, I know what this guy does, or I know what this character does. And kind of thinking along those lines of kind of that simplification, I think really helped.
Wow. I don't know a lot of teams that decided to redo their characters before launch. Yes, that's very exciting. But thinking from a perspective that Valorant's characters are a big portion of the success of the game, I guess it was a worthy move. Speaking of the characters, one of the, in my opinion, coolest one is the Agent Breach. And you worked on that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
This character is from Sweden, is unique in terms of his abilities, and his arms can work as transformers. How did you work on those arms? What were the key art challenges?
Okay, yeah.
How much did you cry?
Oh yeah, I cried a little tiny bit. No, I'm kidding. That breach in particular was extremely challenging. There was a lot of kind of pain points around making that character and making the arms work correctly. So obviously they're much more complex than any of the other characters' arms that we see so far in the game. Yeah, it was a lot of blockouts. And so basically trying to answer the big questions about, well, we have the general arm shape already developed for the game. We have the hand size and everything that's consistent with the other characters. But how do we break that apart and get it to look like it turns into actual weapons? And all of that was just it was developing shapes, a lot of scribbles, paint overs, working back and forth between concept, 3D, and animation, and this is where the animators really came in clutch. I think Paul Momberket was the animator in the prototyping phase on Breach, a fantastically talented dude, and he would just animate like the arm it wasn't even rigged up, right? I was just throwing him blocks of shapes and he would animate the shapes in Maya, setting keyframes with just kind of shape animation on, with the vertices, and come up with like interesting things. From there, he would like turn the arm, rip the hand apart, and then, shove different parts backwards and hide them, and then bring forward parts of like a gun. And then he would send me the video. I would screenshot that, do a paint over, and then we would go back and forth between, all of us and the concept artist, and then say, I think, in order to get that gun read, we should have these other shapes here. And so then I would just quickly block that out. And it was just a lot of back and forth iteration.
How long did it take?
Okay, I'm going to be honest. It's been years since we were prototyping just like Breach out. I think his prototyping probably ended up taking at least a month and a half.
Okay, that's not too bad. That's not.
Yeah, it was rapid iteration.
5 months, 7 months. It was like that could be a big number.
This is a big number.
A part of your resume was like, and something that you're proud of is helping to translate the concepts to the models. Like on Valorant specifically, what do you feel like were the biggest challenges with that?
I would say it's just maybe like the fidelity level stuff. So the things I alluded to earlier, I was discussing, there's a different level of expectation when you can come up really close to characters, or you can you see their forearms in first person view. You want to see extra details, on the gloves. You want to see things like the tendons on on the extensors on the hands. Because it's very close up to the camera. It's like, again, because it's a different kind of game. League developers don't come in, knowing this stuff right off the bat. It's just that when you develop it and you play it, you're like, oh, there's something missing here. The fidelity's not quite there, or the hand just looks a little bit too flat or blobby or whatever it is, and you're trying to look for like, it's like, you have a soft hand, but then you're trying to like get like Joe Madureira, like interesting shapes with the hands, and how do you achieve that? And so there was a lot of iteration just on simple things like that, just like translating stuff like that from concepts, which may not describe all of it, into the 3D model. But we executed that part really, really quickly as well. So it was just a lot of work, rapid iteration, and then just straight up crazy heads down production.
What would you say are like 4 key things that make Valorant characters successful?
Ooh, yeah. I might not come up with 4.
It could be 5.
Yeah.
It could be 6. It could be 3. Any number.
It'll probably be fewer. Okay. So I think the diversity really helps. So it's very easy to kind of tell one character apart from the other. They're also more relatable, I would say, just on a basic level. If you're from a particular area, in a country where it's like, if you're in Brazil and you see a character like Raze, it's like, oh man, kind of I can relate to that. It's got the dancing vibe going, the music thing. So it's like we were trying to like hit on certain cultural aspects. And the ethnic aspects as well, and factor that into like even things like the voiceovers. And so even the voice actors are very authentic. So maybe if we boil it down, it's like the authenticity of the characters. We really wanted that to resonate with the players. Other things is, if it's like talking about the development side of it, the rapid iteration stuff that I brought up before, where if possible, cut out as many people as you possibly can from the prototyping process. It doesn't, to your point earlier, it doesn't need to have a ton of red tape around that development process. If you actually just put SMEs together, and this actually happened where, right after we did the reboot of the entire, launch roster, characters, I think, were considered like a pretty high at-risk part of the project for a short while. What we ended up doing to help de-risk that was they stuck 2 concept artists, me as kind of a 3D hybrid person, and a VFX artist in a little tiny office. We were in maybe a 7-foot by 10-foot little tiny office. And they stuck us in there for about 3.5 weeks and said, you know what the character kits are. You have some scribbles, some very, very early sketches of what you want the new roster to look like. Now you have to develop all of their abilities to work with these new like thematics and visuals. So we had about a day and a half per agent to figure this out. And so that happened in really like rapid fire fashion, but we got it done and we kind of de-risked that part of the project very quickly. And I think it's because we basically cut out as many people as possible from the process and just put our heads together. It's just rapid fire iteration.
I know that you worked on various games with different pricing models, right? And, your responsibility across your career is content creation. So from a free-to-play games to box sales games, how does that affect the content creation in your job?
Let's see. I'm trying to kind of bucket this as there's the box products versus like live products, and I think the idea
box
with
plus DLCs probably.
Nowadays, right? Yeah. It wasn't like that when I first started. It was just you go to the store and you buy your little CD and then you just put that in and that's it. It's like you're done. If there's bugs in that thing, then they're there forever. But nowadays in the land of like a DLC and live product development, it is very different. I think that people can think of content as much smaller buckets, and you can make money. It's kind of, I think, the Walmart idea where they make money a penny at a time, but they make billions of pennies. And so with the whole microtrans idea, obviously League and Valorant and millions of other projects out there are doing the same thing. But it's like you can just kind of make smaller content updates, really kind of small packages, put them out, and if they resonate with the players, and somebody will buy it. And if enough people do that, then they're like, we like this kind of stuff. Then you just keep on churning that stuff out.
On that note, thank you everyone who listened. If you like what we do, please subscribe, like, share, leave your comments, ask us questions. We're here to produce content that inspires you to create better games. And thank you to our special guest, Minoh Kim, for joining us. And on to more.
Thank you, Ninel. Yeah, that was awesome.